shall we? Why don't we start with, do you have that set up or need help, Ellen? You got it. Why don't we start with the prayer to Ganesha on page 1 or 2? 1. And I'll encourage those of you who have been practicing with IAST, that is the Latin alphabet that describes Sanskrit, to read along and be diligent with your pronunciation. We're going to spend a lot of time with pronunciation today to really make sure we all feel it under our fingernails. Come on in. Chai's in the other room if you'd like. Do what you do. So on page 1, I'll just quickly remind us, for those of us who've been here practicing pronunciation, to keep an eye on what we worked on last week. I think Belina and Hélène and Sarah, you guys were here last week and we worked on Anuswara Sandhi, which is the joining of when something has the M with the dot underneath. Is it an M, an N, or N, or a Ng? And so look at the following corresponding aksharam. All of this will make sense in a minute, but for those of you who have that interest and want to pay particular attention, I invite you to do so during the prayer. Here, you can read along to this prayer. So starting with the prayer to Ganesh. Om Gananam Tva Ganapatim Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanaspata anaha Shrinvanu tibhi siddhasadanam Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru me deva Sarvakaryeshu sarvada Siddhi Buddhi Shakti Sahita Shriman Mahaganadipataye Namo Namaha Nirvignam Kuru. Did you get to buy one of these yet, Sarah?
It's pending in the office. I'm still waiting for approval to be able to buy it. I'm trying.
Hilarious. So you know everyone, Sarah, right?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I like to have this out and ready, so if you guys have your books with you, you can flip to page 110, I believe it is, in your books. And what I want to spend time doing today is eventually really going over your lineage of Ayurveda Sutra, which I've written up on the board, which is good because we don't all have the book. And I want to reinforce the pronunciation tactics that we've gone over in the last few weeks. So even if you've never been here and you're still really overwhelmed by Sanskrit, or even if you have a deep background in Sanskrit, I think this class will be really helpful. So we'll spend a good half an hour really going over the different points of pronunciation in the mouth. And I like to also, I like to talk about how Sanskrit is this medium that we're studying our different disciplines, and it's sharing in this great field, this great medium of Sanskrit. So we have Jyotiṣa, or the study of karma and the study of space and its relationship to the macro and microcosm and their relationships. We have the study of Ayurveda and medicine and how we tune ourselves or uncover the tuning that always is between us and the not us, so we think. We have the study of Tantra, which is a whole series of things that are implied with that word, involving ritual and the way that we participate in the unfolding of the great universe. And we have the study of yoga, which is our, let's say, following the rules to the user's manual of the mind. We've found it underneath the VCR and we've never flipped through it. And so here we are learning how to program our VCR. VCR, is that too old of a reference?
That's awesome.
Our Nintendo Wii, I don't know, I'm so out of it. So we're learning how to make sure that we use our mind responsibly rather than be ensnared by the fictive use, the irresponsible use of the mind. And that's the discipline of yoga. And what all of these fields share is they employ the language, the conceptual designed language of Sanskrit, which we've talked about in the past, Sanskritam. Krita means to create. It means a creation, something that's been composed. So we have prakriti, we have vikruti. Prakriti, in the terms of Ayurvedic terminology, means towards or in the direction of form. So we can think of it as formed. That's what a prakriti is. It's our constitution. In the Sankhya Darshana, in the perspective of Sankhya, it implies coming into form. It's no longer the choiceless passive awareness of Purusha, but it's taking an intentional choice and moving in the direction of everything at the bottom of the Sankhya chart, the Gyanendriyas and Karmendriyas and Mahabhutas. And so Kriti gives us that sense. Vikruti means against form, or in the wrong way from form, or going away from form. And that's what is our pathological state, our state of imbalance. So samskritam, sam meaning complete, balanced, and skrita or krita in this case meaning to be composed. So Sanskrit is this language that's fully composed, it's fully thought out, it is complete without us, and we are just coming upon it. So it is a law of gravity, it's the law of combustion. It is another one of the laws of the natural world, is the way that Sanskrit has arisen. And so it behooves one who is engaged in the study or exploration of yoga or tantra or Jyotiṣa or Ayurveda to really feel comfortable with the quality of pronouncing Sanskrit correctly, of appreciating Sanskrit and its origins and its use in different disciplines, because Sanskrit plays very different roles in, say, a speculative metaphysical philosophy differently than it does in a logical philosophy or in a physical philosophy. So we have Vaisheshika, we have Nyaya, we have Vedanta on all of those terms. We have Ayurveda, which is kind of a mixture of physical and superphysical. We have very precise uses of specific parts of speech in Sanskrit that are used medically and that are used chemically. And so it's good to be familiar with the way Sanskrit operates. And indeed, in classical Indian philosophical work, there is a prerequisite for students who are engaged in any study of Tantra, of Vedanta, of Nyaya, to first study the limbs of the Vedas, or the limbs of knowledge, that are called the Shat Vedāṅga. Anga meaning limb, we know it from Ashtanga, as in the 8 limbs of yoga. And the word Veda in this context means both knowledge, video in Latin, which means to see, like videotape or VCR. And Vedāṅga also refers to the limbs of the Vedas themselves, which we probably are familiar with vaguely as some historical oral tradition that became a textual tradition eventually, that takes us back as pretty much as far as you can go. 4,000 to 5,000 years if we're being just speculative about the whole thing. And so the Vedāṅgas are a way of making sure that when you're approaching a study of any of these disciplines like Nyaya or Yoga or Ayurveda, that you're first following these 6 different limbs. You've studied these limbs. And the limbs are pronunciation, Śikṣā. Why do we pronounce things the way we do in Sanskrit? Why is the mouth and the apparatus of the voice used in the way it's used? What's the difference between a ta and a ta, and why? And where does the language come from? How does it emerge within us? How do we know that we're pronouncing it correctly? And that's what we're going to spend time doing today. And I kind of find that that theme is pretty interwoven and implicit in anything I talk about because I really enjoy enunciating and accenting properly. So Śikṣā is the first limb of the Vedāṅgas, the first branch. And there are texts written on pronunciation and phonetics that go back thousands of years. In many ways, the Western field of linguistics is very much based on and certainly inspired by the grammarian work of the Indian philosophers, the works of people like Pāṇini, who's a person who wrote a book on Sanskrit grammar going back about 1,500 years, which predates any linguistic analysis in the Western world by at least 1,200 years. So Śikṣā, number one. The next one is Vyākaraṇa. You can write these down or just let it kind of sink in. You're not going to be tested. But Vyākaraṇa is the architecture of the language, how words combine into phrases, how phrases combine into thoughts. Or we can think of this Vyākaraṇa as meaning grammar. And there are, as I mentioned, many texts and many commentaries written on speculating on how the language emerged, how the grammar was formulated in Sanskrit. Was it intuited, or was it actively composed and written? Some languages tend to be a mixture of both. Especially the farther back in time we go, the less we had to do with the world. And the world kind of was doing itself without our interjections. So Sanskrit seemed to have arisen from that time. So Vyākaraṇa is a discussion about the rules of Sanskrit and how it's composed. The next of the limbs is Nirukta, which means etymology, or the meaning of words, the meaning of sounds, the meaning of the bīja, the sound syllables that compose each of the phonemes of the Sanskrit alphabet. The next limb is Chandas, which means prosody, cadence, meter. It's a discussion of the proper way to chant. Why do we chant in certain meters? Why do we emphasize certain syllables? What is the length of certain aksharam, or phonemes in the Sanskrit alphabet? And then the last two limbs of Vedāṅga study have little to do with Sanskrit, except implicitly. They are Kalpa, which is a study of ritual and its proper use, its proper and appropriate timing. Pretty much, Kalpa has a lot to do with timing generally, and it comes from the same root as Kala, which means time. Sankalpa, yes. So with intention. You might have heard the Sankalpa that you perform in a puja. It's like everybody perform your Sankalpa, which means kind of tune in and set your intention to this moment. And then the last of the limbs is Jyotiṣa, which is a study of karma. I like to think of it as a study of karma. We all know it as being translated as astrology, Vedic astrology, or the study of light. Comes from the root Jyotihi, which means light, or brilliance, or shining. But I think of it also as actively studying the lights in the sky, but also shining a light on the web of karma that informs the backdrop of the universe. We're looking at the quilt most of the time. Jyotiṣa goes and shows us how everything is stitched together. It's the warp and the woof of the behind the scenes. So these are the Vedāṅgas, and they will inform any good study of Ayurveda, yoga, tantra, anything like that. And we're going to spend a fair amount of time really making sure that we feel comfortable with the appreciation of all of them, but really specifically the first four, and really specifically kind of the first couple. Namely, pronunciation, and a little bit about how the language kind of grows and takes shape, so that we know why are these words shaped the way they are, and why do they look a little bit different than in the text when we see them written out independently. Why are the words different than they are in the sentence? What's going on there? So we'll talk about a little bit of that. Any weird questions so far about weird stuff? Cool. So, everyone has one of these kind of sheets, or you've seen it at least. Don't feel obligated to pull it out if you don't think you need it, but it's a nice thing to refer to. And here, you can see this too, video. I forgot about this little guy. So this is just a discussion about where we spend time in the mouth and the throat and the whole vocal apparatus when we're appreciating any of the different classes of pronunciation. And this is a really great representation of the Sanskrit alphabet. And I know for some of you, we've talked about this a few times. We're going to get deep pretty quick, but I wanted to make sure that we all feel really comfortable with this. So this is what's cool about what's called the Varnamala, which is a varna meaning class or color. The word varga is used interchangeably with varna. Varna means color specifically. It's also the word for caste in the Indian reckoning. But varga and varna both mean classification. And mala is mala, beg your pardon, mala means waist. Mala is a garland or a rosary, something that's strung together. We're probably familiar with, this is a fun little side note inspired by my friend Dave, who you'll meet one day. He's a teacher, sometimes on again, off again teacher at the Institute. And he and I get together and get all nerdy about stuff all the time. We are probably familiar with this pose, which in the West, we've often translated, there's fuller expressions of it that go around. We usually translate this as malasana, or garland pose, and often it's because we create a rosary. Typically, this is probably coming from the root malasana, because this is our waist elimination pose. And it's one of those opportunities to see how in Sanskrit a long vowel can change the meaning of a word quite drastically. Mala, waist, mala, the only difference being and that short and long and mala becoming garland or rosary.
So there is mala. Mala is waist.
Mala.
And mala is garland.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this here is the varna mala, not the varna mala. This isn't the colorful waist or the classification of elimination. It's a good name for a band, though. So what I love about this is oftentimes when the Sanskrit alphabet is being learned, especially in the Indian educational system, it's often taught vowels, then consonants, then semivowels, then sibilants, and then compound consonants. In a more classical setting, and what we're studying, just to be historically informed, is what's known as classical Sanskrit. The Sanskrit we're utilizing, that Ayurveda utilizes, is called classical Sanskrit, compared to Vedic Sanskrit, which is the Sanskrit that's used in the Vedas, the Rig Veda, the Atharva Veda, etc. And the texts are slightly different. The language is used a little bit differently. And we're going to stick with what's called classical Sanskrit, but you don't need to necessarily know that there's a different thing. And 2 years from now, you can investigate what Vedic Sanskrit is. But the alphabet, when it's composed in this sort of way, I think is super helpful. Because everything in the top of Varga, everything in that top row in red, is going to be pronounced in the same part of the mouth. And if you look at your little gentleman, everything that's pronounced in the Kantya Varga is going to be utilizing only the apparatus that begins in the back of the throat. So when we go through that line of the alphabet, I'll go through it once, then we can go through it together, we're only using this part of the throat. A, k, k, g, g, n, h, not moving a thing, right? You're just living back here. Embody that whole part of your face, mouth apparatus. So let's get back there together and let's do it at that same pace, knowing that when we're doing the aspirate, meaning when we're doing those that have air coming out, we're not extending the length of the sound or the length of the vowel. It's not k, ka. It's k, 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 g, g. Same length of vowel. Make sense?
I find it hard maybe for me. Is there a way to help me with that? Because I tend to
Elongate it?
Yeah.
I think listening to yourself on a recording is quite helpful.
Is recording?
Like I would recommend making yourself a recording of the alphabet.
Okay.
Listen back and say, and be objective and say, you know what, that's not correct. If I were listening to someone else do that, I would be, hey, just so you know. And be that critical, be that constructive with yourself.
Recording.
So again, just to hear, starting at the consonants, k, k, g, g, n, that n. It's in the back of the throat, it's the glottal stop just releasing and making space. It's the word sing. It's the word lung, but without the hard ga that we add to it. So let's try this row together. A, k, k, g, g, n, h, and that visarga, that last thing, that release of air at the end, softer than we all think. It goes It's a relaxation. You've probably seen that in a lot of the metered pieces of sutra that we work with in class, many of them the line ends with a visarga. But that doesn't influence the meter, the chandas. So if the meter is in 8, technically there's an echo of the 8th syllable, but it doesn't make the meter in 9 because it's so light, it's not even a beat. And that'll make more sense when you see it in context. It doesn't interrupt the flow because it's much slighter than people tend to pronounce it. People sometimes go, Om Shantihi. Not so much, unless you're like singing a song or something that kind of, you can bend the rules when you're making music out of stuff. But generally, it's a relax.
How do you pronounce Shanti?
Shantihi. Shantihi. Slight. Guruhu. It's actually the first person nominative, that doesn't matter. It's a noun when it's put in just regular tense. It always has a visarga to end it. So when there's someone here named Ram, his name isn't Ram when I'm pointing to him, it's Ramaha. Trying to think of other things I know the names of. I don't know the names of too many things in Sanskrit as far as like weird nouns like bicycles and stuff. But like anything that you're going to point to, like this is Ashayaha. It's a vessel. So it's a very common thing to do in Sanskrit language, but it's just pako. It just falls out. So in this instance, it would be almost like you can't hear it, but you're letting go at the end of it. That's what's fun. So we're living in the back of the throat, and then we're going to zoom and go like this with our tick, 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 and we're going to end up in the second position called the talavya. Just to say also that kantya is a word that means of the throat. And I came upon this really great realization the other day. For months, a year probably, I've recognized and been showing folks that ya as an ending, as a suffix in Sanskrit, does mean derived from or of. But what's great is that we do the same thing in English with the letter Y. So if you want to say throat in Sanskrit, you say kanta. If you want to say of the throat or throat-y, you say kantya. So that -y ending in English plays a similar role. And we're going to do that with all of the positions in the mouth. Teeth is danta, and of the teeth is dantya, so teethy. So this word kantya, that's what we're getting. We're getting throat and throaty. The next one is talavya, which comes from the word talu, which means apex. And it's referring to the point where our palate begins. The back of our mouth, the top of our throat. So we're going to take our whole apparatus, our whole awareness, and put it about here. And then we're going to begin with the vowels and go through the line in the alphabet here. I'll do it once. E. Yeah.
Talavya.
Talavya.
Talavya. So it's a long A.
It's a long ah, yes.
A longer A. And the meaning is?
Talu means apex or top. And it refers actually to a part of the skull and even a marmani, a point of marma. And in this instance, we're translating it as, bless you, palate, but it's really just, it's because it's pointing up to the top of the skull, but on the way there, we're pointing up to the palate. So it's the top of the mouth in many ways. And also, it's a good habit to get into that when we're saying, is there an A in that letter? We should instead be using the Sanskrit phonemes. We should be saying, is there an or an A? Is there an E or an E? Things like that. Does that have a ra in it? Rather than, is there an R in that word? We're in the world of Sanskrit now. It's good to be consistent. And I've been emphasizing with a lot of us that it's very helpful to think in terms of, or to be consistent when we're using certain things. So when we're talking, when we're writing or reading, until we know Devanagari, which is the script that Sanskrit's written in, let's be consistent in our application of the transliteration that's known as IAST, the International Alphabet of Sanskrit Transliteration. It's what's used in this book. It's what's used in most Sanskrit academic scholarly works. It's not always what people write on chalkboards, though. So you be mindful that when people write two E's, they probably mean E. That is, an I with a line on top. And it's good to be consistent with that in your own note-taking, and do the best you can when someone puts a word with an SH on the board, knowing that in IAST there is no SH. There either is a sha or a sha that's transliterated either S with a line on top or S with a dot underneath. So, really helpful to be consistent with your own work so that the 10% of the time that you're not in control of what you're reading or seeing, you are okay with that and you're more consistent on your own and makes up for the other times. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Can you just tell me again what in Kantiya
Mhm.
the ya means?
The ya is sort of like derived from,
Oh, yeah.
participating in,
Mhm.
of. And this is great, Christine, because at the end of this, you're going to pronounce that word that you just pronounced with such beautiful precision. I think you said Kantiya.
Yeah.
It's going to be Kantiya when we're out of here.
Okay. Awesome.
Big difference in pronunciation, mala and mala. And ah. I've talked about the difference in past past gatherings of ananda, which means without joy, and ananda, which means with great joy or bliss. So it's a big difference to say that Swami Vivekananda came over than saying Swami Vivekananda, which is actually the pronunciation Vivekananda. Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda. That's a tricky one because we've, kind of been in the wrong posture for about 100 years with that pronunciation. So sometimes we allow that. Same with Triphala or Kapaha. Those are how we pronounce certain words in Sanskrit, but it becomes Triphala and Kapha when we've inherited it through 200 years of Hindification and translation into the Western idiom and all sorts of things. So I would sound like a fool if I walked into a place and said, "Do you have any Triphala?" It's like I've mentioned, it's kind of like going to an Italian restaurant and saying, like, "I'll have the pizza with the mozzarella." It's like, all right, we get it. So we did Kantiya, now we're moving forward and we're at the Talavya. And we're going to start with the vowels. I'll do it first, E, E. The only difference between short and long vowels is one extra beat. The only exception is and ah, which are pronounced shallowly in the mouth and then widely in the mouth, and have the difference in beat. So, ah, but then E, E, same exact pronunciation, just longer in length. Same with oo, same exact pronunciation, just longer in length. So, when this part of the alphabet comes, we're going to do short, and then everything that's not in this row is long vowel. So that means the O is 2 beats, the ow is 2 beats, and when we get to that row, you'll see that I'll be demonstrating that as I chant. Here we are in the palatal row, or the talavya. E, E, A, I, cha, cha, ja, ja, nya, ya, sha. Pay particular attention to that last part. We all got that nya. I'm sure that Pranav's been helping you guys get that down, like nya, 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 nya. Nya, and then you stay in that spot, and then go ya, and then don't move a thing and go sha. Do whatever you can to make a sha sound in that position. That's how you pronounce that sha. So let's do that whole row together, starting with the short E. E, E, A, I, cha, cha, ja, ja, nya, ya, sha. Everyone's smiling. It was great. Ya, sha, ya, sha. That's your trick. That's your, when in doubt, you're like, oh, how do I pronounce that one? Just go ya, because we all know how to pronounce ya, and then just go sha. Ya, sha. And it'll be contrasted with the sha that's in the cerebral row that we'll get to in a moment, and I'll show you how to kind of divide your mind between sha and sha and sha and sha. Hearing it in someone else will depend on whether or not they're really good at pronouncing it. But knowing that you're pronouncing it correctly that's all you need to do in life. You don't need to be in control of everyone else's reality, just your own. Thank goodness. So then we take our whole apparatus, our whole awareness, and we go tick, 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 and we're at the murdhanya. Notice that I'm pronouncing that with a long oo and an aspirate dha, all in the dental position. So I'm not going dha, I'm going murdhanya. That was a little bit of an exaggeration with, I almost added an apostrophe, but that's a way to kind of cheat your way into aspirating. You start with da, daha, and then you slowly take away that elision and you create that da, 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 da. But in the meantime, if you're having difficult with aspirating and not aspirating, add an apostrophe. Da, 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 daha. And then just make that space infinitely less, like Zeno. It was a Greek philosophical joke right there. Zeno's paradox. You can never get to the finish line because you keep dividing the distance between you and the finish line in half. So you never actually get to the finish line? No? Okay. All right, so murdhanya. And you'll see here, it begins with what? These weird ones, right? They're the hard ones. Not so much hard. Now we're going to take like a little bit of a veer into explaining what a vowel is and what a consonant is, what a sibilant is, what a semivowel is, because I think that's really helpful. So before we go on to this row, I'm going to use this as a launch pad. So a vowel in any language is defined as that which touches the mouth as little as possible on the inside. In Sanskrit, the word is asprishta. Sprishta comes from the word, gives us the word sparsha as well, which means touch, like sparshindriya, one of the sites of vata dosha. So sprishta means touching, and asprishta, has a meaning of not. So not touching, asprishta. So that which doesn't touch the mouth, besides the natural friction of the moving of air and the vibration of vocal cords, when something's not touching, it's a vowel. In fact, linguists or proto-linguists, when they were studying Sanskrit in the 1800s, they realized that's a really good way to put it. That's what a vowel is. We should call those vowels. And then they came up with the whole terminology in the Western linguistic tradition. But in Sanskrit, it's been around for a couple thousand years of thinking asprishta. So we're going e, a, I, o, ow, except for the and the aha. Those are asprishta. They're not being touched. Everything else in the alphabet is sprishta, because we're going ka, we're going ta, we're going pa. All of those involve some active meeting of parts of the apparatus, whether it be parts of the tongue and the palate, the throat, the glottal stop, the lips, the teeth. There's something touching. The semivowels are a slight exception, and they are known sometimes as ishat sprishta, which means a little bit touched, ishat sprishta. But they're also known as antahastaha. Antahastaha means standing in between. Staha means tuhula, stahira. It means to stand, means to climb a staircase. Just aspirating for fun. And antaha means inner. You might have seen, has Dr. Law drawn the tree and the vision and then the whole line of, no? Well, that's what is known in Vedanta as the antarakarana, or the inner cause, or the inner equipment. So the word antaha, using a visarga, A-N in English for just now, A-N-T-A-H with a dot underneath, pronounced antaha, means inner. So antahastaha means that which stands between sprishta and asprishta, and it's a semi-vowel. What's a semi-vowel? We'll go to any one of the semi-vowels. You'll see it's the second to last column, and it starts on the top with ha, ya, ra, la, va. Pranav likes to sing those, if you'll remember. Yara, la, va. Does he still do that?
No.
You haven't gotten that yet.
Oh, cool. Don't worry about it. So anyway, you can take any of those, and it's like, well, what's the difference between those and, like, especially when we get to this next row, what's the difference between the semi-vowel ra and the vowel ra? What? It's very similar. Well, the difference is that a semi-vowel is composed of the corresponding short vowel added together with the short a. So go to la. Well, actually, we haven't done that one. We'll go to e. E plus a. Put them together. Ya. So that's the semi-vowel. Ya. Going here, which we haven't yet done, well, we'll skip that one. We'll go to u and a. So u and a together? Wa. That's why that's not a va. That's why that's closer to a wa than it is to a va. Because in ishat sprishta, or antahastaha, is pronounced with a correspondence between the short vowel in its row and the short vowel a. Wa, we have ra, we have ra, we have ya, and then ha is its own anomaly. We'll talk about it a different time. So that's what a semivowel is. And then we have the very last column, and those are known as sibilants in the linguistic tradition of the West, and we call them ushma varna, which means that which creates heat letter. Ushma is spelled sha with the dot underneath, so it's a cerebral sha with the dot underneath, and then ma, U-S with a dot M-A. Ushma meaning creating heat, gives us the word, ush gives us the word for usha, which means dawn, gives us the word ushna, which means hot. It also gives us words aushidhi. You might have heard that word, at least maybe in passing or accidentally you might have heard it. It means plant or medicinal plant. And it comes from the root ush, which means to heat. And what I love, I was musing upon the meaning of this word a couple weeks ago, because pankaja Everyone knows Pankaja. Pankaja asked, she said, what is the meaning of that word? Where does it come from? And I said, oh, I don't know. Let me really think about it. And in the meantime, Mitesh said, oh, I think I've heard Dr. Lad wax poetic about the meaning of the word aushadhi. Let me kind of go through my notes and talk to people. And so we both kind of break, and then we came back together like a couple hours later, and I was like, here's what I think. And he said, here's what I think. And I said, ausha comes from originally the root usha. It's hard to find etymological roots for things sometimes. You've got to be creative and know Sanskrit grammar in order to kind of reverse engineer a word. Because sometimes they'll just be speculative folk etymology or esoteric etymology. So it's fun to kind of play with it all. So I think it comes from usha and this root dha, which means to hold, or even to create a vessel to hold. And so I said probably the photosynthesis of capturing heat and energy from the sun and converting it into life and growth creates this as a vessel of heat, a vessel of chemical energy. And so it's an aushadhi. And Dr. Lad had apparently said something similar, but his was that it also is, it holds the heat and intensity and vitality that inspires the dhi, or the capacity that we have called the intellect in Sanskrit. Dhi is the word in Sanskrit, which means this capacity to hold information. So it helps to inspire and inform that part of our mind. And I was like, oh, that's pretty similar, because the dhi is related to dha, it's that which holds, and all this stuff. So anyway, ush gives us that same root. That was quite a detour, wasn't it? All right, back to things. So we have our asprishta varna. Notice I'm just using the word varna or varga to mean anything that belongs to this class. And then we have this other class, this other varna, called sprishta, which takes us all the way to the end, although this column is technically ishat sprishta, a little bit touched, or antahasta, in between. And then we have our ushma varga, which means our sibilance, or our heat-creating situations. And so now, let's go back to our cerebral row. We're in the Murdanya. How do we pronounce this weird vowel? You'll hear it pronounced colloquially, meaning regionally. People will pronounce it ri, ri, or ru, ru. That's fine, but there's a bit of a touching going on, isn't there? So more classically, that aksharam, which I haven't even defined yet, so I'll give you that word in a moment. This aksharam and this aksharam are pronounced without touching. So you want to put your tongue in the position where the rest of the row eventually will be, katadadana, that is retroflex action of the tongue where you're pointing up to your third eye, and all those dots underneath remind you of your third eye, so that's where you're going to go with your tongue. Put your tongue there, but don't touch, and make a ra, ra, from back to front, ra. Now the only difference, when we extend it for the long version, is in length. Ra, ra, and then short, ra. Perfect. If you want, you can bring in the ri, ri. It's kind of more a North Indian thing to do. You'll find people will pronounce things like prakriti, but it's written with the vowel, and it's actually transliterated. P, R with the dot underneath, K-R-I-T. So, I'm sorry, P-R-A-K-R with the dot underneath. That's where it takes place. Yeah, the dot's underneath the R next to the K. So, kriti, Sanskrita. That word has the same thing. So we can write, if we wanted to transliterate not using I-A-S-T, we could write Sanskruta or Sanskrita with an I, but more precisely it's written Skrita with an R with the dot underneath, and no other vowel, no I, no U. You'll probably have seen that Dr. Lad writes Prakruti, and very commonly you'll see the word Prakriti written, like Dr. Svoboda's book, Prakriti. It's pronounced the same, ideally, it's pronounced Prakruti. Krishna has the same vowel in it. There is no I in Krishna. There is no U in Krishna. There's only the vowel Ra, Krishna. We are so used to writing Krishna with an I that we have inherited that, just like Triphala and Kapha. We've inherited that as being pronounced Krishna. If we were to pronounce it Krishna, that's fine, but you might get a few like, what, mozzarella? Like you might get some of those looks. So it's a good thing to be consistent with whatever you do. So if you're going to use that Ra, use it, 99.9% of the time. And then when it gets to Krishna, you can say Krishna. Or, words that are similarly passed down to
We
us.
would say it like the proper way to say it.
Krishna. Krishna. All of those letters that follow, all of the aksharam, are in the cerebral row. So we have a sh, we have a n, and we have a r. Did you have a question?
No, I was just saying
Saying
it softly.
One of the great things that we went over last week is that Sanskrit wants us to pronounce it easily. And so words will change. There's a series of rules called sandhi, which means joining, that help to dictate how grammar plays, what the rules are for grammar. And it's in an effort to make the word easily pronounceable. So in the word Krishna, we'll note that I should really have a motherboard here that I can write stuff on, but I'm sorry I don't, so imagine it. We have a K, we have the vowel R, we have the sh with the dot underneath, we have the n with the dot underneath. Thank you. I have another one too, but that's actually right here and right now. You're great. So, I'm going to write Krishna.
Nice.
This is how we transliterate Krishna. Now here's what's cool. All of these, and actually all of these, because this is just one aksharam, all of these belong to the same row. Because it's easy to pronounce that way. If we had to start in this part of the mouth and then jump back to another part of the mouth in order to finish the pronunciation, it gets awkward. Sanskrit likes to stay either in a forward moving direction or stay in one row if it can. So rules will take place when we create words that make it very easy to pronounce, like water, like the flowing of water. So I'll give you an example. Well, let's finish this row because we didn't even do that, and then I'll give you an example of like, what if this was spelled with the other sha? Like, what would we have to do with our mouths? We'd have to go like this, and it'd be awkward. So we have ra, ra, and then da, ta, da, dha, na, ra, sha. So give that a shot, and when you get to the last three, pay particular attention to three aspects. This na is different than all of the other nasals. This ra is exactly the same as this ra, except we're touching. Same placement of the tongue, but we're touching. And then this sha, you don't move a thing. You stay with that na, ra, sha. That sha takes place in that part of the mouth. So let's do this row together. Ra, ra, da, ha, da, ha, na, ra, sha, ya, sha, ra, sha, sha. Smile. The line on top reminds you that you're smiling. If we remove the vocalization from both of those sounds, we can hear that the movement of air has a different pitch. Here is the ya, sha. Here is the ra, sha. Back and forth. Higher pitch, lower pitch. Higher pitch, lower pitch. So the palatal S with the line on top is pronounced with a higher pitch than the one with the dot underneath. The dot underneath can remind you, underneath, it's going to be ta-ta-da-da-na-da-sha. The line on top, you're going to remember yasha, yasha, yasha. A word that we come across every day in our sutras is a word that means that which remains. Nishesha jadyapaha. It's the prayer to Saraswati. You can see that we begin in the back of the mouth, and then we come to the mordanya. We move forward. Shesha, shesha. Actively exaggerate it. Everyone's got their eyes closed during prayers, so go ni shesha jadyapaha. Shesha is what you're going to do. I mentioned that when I was learning Mandarin, or Chinese, it's tonal, and in order to remember it, I would go up and down with sentences when I chant the numbers and things like that. Even to this day, if I'm remembering how to say something in Chinese, I'll go up and down kind of softly. And if someone's watching me, they might be like, what's going on? So now we know the difference between sha and sha, correct? Imagine if we wrote Krishna now, and I'm going to write it like this, and we're going to see what happens in slow motion. So now I have kra. This is our first part, which involves the vowel. Then we have our yasha, and then we have to jump down and do our na. So we have Krishna. It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Krishna. Your tongue has to retroflex to make this na. Really funny, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. We're recording. So, Sanskrit likes to design itself to make it go like this. You want to flow forward or stay in one general area. Very infrequently will you jump back and forth. It'll happen, and it's fun sometimes, but there are rules that make it unlikely. So, we've gone through our cerebral row. We call that murdhanya. Now we're getting to our dantya. This is home base for Western language speaking folks. Everything in it is easy except for the first two thingies. Oh, I keep saying the word akshara or aksharam, and only a few of you have come across that word before. This is a word that means a letter of the Sanskrit alphabet, but we don't use the word letter in linguistics because a letter is a name for a sound. Like we say the letter K sounds like K in English. But in Sanskrit, they don't say the letter K because it already sounds like what it is. It already is what it is. And that's like a whole conversation about bīja and what it means to be the thing that it is rather than to have a name that refers to the thing that it is. So a thing that is the thing that it is called a phoneme. It's a sound event in linguistics. And in Sanskrit, the word is akshara. Akshara is plural. Aksharam is singular noun. So we have akshara. We can probably guess what this prefix means. Without or not.
Yeah.
This is a word root. Most of you are in Emily's class and you guys are doing medical terminology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Very, very similar. And I think we should teach a class, maybe that's what this is, but medical term for Sanskrit. It's super helpful to understand it with the same basic concept, prefix, suffix, word root. Ksha means to decay or to deplete. In Sanskrit we have words kshaya. Kshaya. If you have vata kshaya, you have depletion of vata dosha. This is of, the suffix that means of the nature of depletion, related to depletion. The word kashaya means a decoction. When you cook medicine down and it becomes a beautiful, empowered substance. That's called a kashaya. And in South India, all herbal medicine, pills, soups, broths, wines are all called kashayam. It's just like a colloquial word that means, decoction happened probably. So kashaya, so that difference between the word I'm saying and this word is kashaya. We have kashaya and we have kshaya. There's quite a small difference, but it's quite impactful. So the word that means akshara is that which is not going anywhere, that which is eternal, ever present. There is a line from the Bhagavad Gita. I think I mentioned this last week. I think I did, but I guess it's gone. There's a line from the Bhagavad Gita that reminds us that the unreal never was and the real never ceases to be. Remember talking about that last week?
Yes.
And what's beautiful about that is in the Sanskrit context, Sanskrit, like I mentioned earlier, exists besides us, without us, in spite of us. It's the thing that happens when we, in form, put our mouths in certain areas. We create certain sounds. And those sounds begin then to exist in form. And we do not then assign meanings to those sounds. The sounds themselves are the thing that they are. For instance, the corresponding sound for this part of the throat, the energy center that lives here called viśuddha cakra, is yum, 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 delicious. And it is the sound of this energy being activated. It isn't the name for the energy being activated. When you say yum, you are activating viśuddha cakra. And that's what's a beautiful thing about Sanskrit. I mentioned last week about bīja mantra. Bīja means seed syllable, means that which is being born. Ja is a root that means to be born, to generate. A bīja mantra is an embodiment of the energy that we're referring to. So, for instance, Ganesha is the name of the Lord of the universe, the Lord of all of the stuff. Gana, same root as guna, all the qualities. Isha, same root as in Mitesh, his name. That means Lord of, friend of the, what does it mean, Mitesh? Brother, it kind of means like friend of the divine. And Gana Isha, together becoming Ganesha, it's the Lord of all the stuff. Lord of the multitudes is often how it's translated. His name is Ganesha, but the sound that is Ganesha is Gang. Gang. We're using that first row, Kantya Nga. Gang. Gang. So similarly, each aksharam is the embodiment of a specific vibe. Literally vibration, but also vibe in the California sense. It's got a whole packed meaning into it that is it. It's not referring to anything. So that's what I say when I keep saying akshara or aksharam. Aksharam being singular. So back down to the next row. We're going to go tick, 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 tick to dantya. Dantya. Very easy, except what is going on with those first two vowels? I'm sure you guys have gotten there, right? You've gotten there. And everyone was like, what do we do? Not as hard as it looks, but here's a little caveat, a little warning. These aksharam don't actually exist in Sanskrit. They are theoretical because we're doing the same thing with our mouth that we do in every other row and column, but we're doing it there. And so Sanskritists said, well, we need to be consistent and thorough. But these are unattractive and difficult to make, so we're not going to ever use them. They don't have a use. So this one, especially the long version, literally doesn't exist. This one only exists in one word in Vedic Sanskrit. That's like the usual quip that Sanskritists and Sanskrit enthusiasts like to say, that it only exists in one word ever, and it's in the Rig Veda. So it's like a very long time ago word that no one's ever going to pronounce anyway. But we're thorough. Sanskritists are nothing but thorough. I don't know the word. I'll let you know if I come across it. So this is pronounced the same as this, except before we pronounce it, we add a little bit of a la, but we're trying not to touch too, because it's still asprishta. Here's a cue. The word jewelry kind of has a similar event going on. Ra, 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 ra. That's the short form. Ra is the long form. The long form I'm almost hesitant to pronounce because most Sanskrit dictionaries certainly don't have any entries under that word. Maybe that's a good way to look up what the other word is. Maybe the Sanskrit dictionaries, the classical dictionaries, only have one under that thing. But this one is often put in parentheses. Because all it is, you know how you lengthen the other vowels by doubling the beat? Well, that's what you would do with this vowel, but we don't do that because it doesn't exist in practice. So oftentimes it's not even pronounced, or it's not even listed in the Sanskrit alphabet, in many alphabets. But here we are, ra, ra. Let's try that. Try it like jewelry. Uri. So even say luri. Now instead of a luri, say ra. Now without touching with that la, ra. I'm touching. To be honest, I'm touching, my tongue widens and my teeth kind of touch my tongue with the L part of it. Ra. But I abandon that when I do the sweeping forward for the ra part of it. So, ra, ra. Weird. Now, ta, ta, and I just want to point out that last row, I didn't point this out. I heard a couple of ta, ta, da, da, no. And even a little bit better, but still not correct, is ta, ta, da, da. Still no. It's ta, ta, da, da, na. And this row would be ta, ta, da, da, na. Not ta, ta, and not ta, ta. Get it?
Yeah, we get it, but you have to do it.
You gotta do it. So let's do it together, because this row is so easy, like why not? Here, let's start with the quirky ones. Ra, ra. Ta, ta, da, da, na, la, sa. La, sa. I mean, that's all English. Lassi. Lassi is spelled with those words in Hindi. spelled with those aksharam. Sorry. So nothing more in that row, but let's go pip, 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 and move the whole apparatus to the lips. The difference between this vowel here and this vowel here. What's the difference?
Between which one?
This one and this one.
The U and the U.
What's the difference?
Oh, it's just a long.
Only difference is in length.
Yeah.
Pronunciation is identical. So we have oo, o, ow. And a quick pause to say that o is even and pure. It's called a shuddha, meaning it's absolutely pure. It's not a diphthong in the context of English diphthongs. A diphthong, one of my Sanskrit teachers by proxy used to say, it's not something you wear to the beach. But a diphthong is a sound event that has a change in the aperture of the mouth within the sound event. In English, O is a diphthong. Like we say, I'm going, going. In Sanskrit, it's O. Japanese, it's O. Spanish, como estas. It's not como. It's not, if English speakers get into that trap sometimes. So we have O, ow, both two beats. And then we move on to pa, pa, ba, bha, ma, wa, To be fair, the visarga and the anuswar, that is the aha and the to me are less aksharam than they are elements of punctuation. And it's an odd thing to include them in an alphabet, but I've been trying to kind of reckon, like, how did that ever begin as a thing? Because we are demanding of the in order to demonstrate how the anuswar, what's the nasalization of the how it plays in that context. But the anuswar can be involved with any vowel. So it could be im, aum. So it's just being demonstrated, being showcased using an Similarly with the visarga. A visarga is a grammatical rule or a piece of punctuation that makes any last syllable echoed with that half sort of beat. So like shantihi, that's an example of visarga under I. This is an example, aha, of a visarga under a. So those two, to me, are like less aksharam and more punctuation.
And what kind of punctuation is it for the
It's a nasalization, and we spent a little bit of time on this last week. What's cool, now that we've gone through the whole alphabet, I can at least branch off and...
Which case do you use it?
It is a way of Sanskrit to make your pronunciation easier, and it's used at least a couple times in our prayer, in our sutra that we'll go over. But what it is to reiterate from last week, the application of a anuswara, or the m sound, is pronounced differently depending on the aksharam that follows. Because, like, we'll take the word, I mentioned, whoops. So the transliteration for all anuswara is an M with a dot underneath. Sometimes in non-IAST, you'll see an N with a dot underneath. I'm sorry. No, because that's a na. You'll see something else. I think it's not an N with a dot on top. No, I think it's just an M with a dot underneath. Sorry, I'm just confusing us by saying things. So check this out. We know this word, right? Before we pronounce it, think about this rule. That this thing is going to be pronounced differently in any context, depending on the aksharam, in this case, kha, that follows it. And the way you know how to pronounce it is you pronounce this just like the nasal that corresponds in the same row as this. So for kha, that's in which of the vargas? You could say Sanskrit or just what color it is. Red, the kantya varga. So kha is in that row. What's the corresponding nasal? Na, lung, sing. It's the one that is transliterated like this. So that means that's going to be pronounced like that. So this is pronounced sankhya.
So it's written often with an N.
It's sometimes written with an N, but we're not going to pay attention to people who don't use IAST. So ideally it's either written like this or just in Devanagari. And it's pronounced always so that your mouth can seamlessly go from the nasal that is closest to the next situation. And you can see how it would be more difficult to say samkhya than it is to say sankhya. Sankhya is right there. Samkhya, you got to go back. So when you see this, it's not pronounced like an M all the time. It's only pronounced like an M when what follows it? When would it be pronounced like a M? There are only 4 or so options.
P or B?
P, P. So let's do Sanskrit. P, P, Ba, or Bha, correct? So if this was Sambhujana, which I don't know if that's a word, but that would be pronounced Sambhujana, because it's all there in the labial row, the Oshya row. Sampranyata, we can say, with awareness or with the use of the mind.
What is the word for that means the development of business?
Samprapti,
Oh, something, that's what I
good one. So Samprapti.
So it is that. And
So
that-
if it were written like that, sorry, I should be a little more precise. If it were written like this, it would also be pronounced like that.
Right.
There are rules, or there are times when you use the anuswar, and there are times when you just write in the aksharam that it is. And for instance, you see the word Vedam, first row? That will be pronounced like an M because the next word starts with a pa.
Oh, okay.
But if we erase the word prajapatim and we put the word sahasram and we put it up there, then it would be, how would you pronounce the word Veda? What's the nasal sound if we're going from Veda something into Sahasraksham? So look at your sa.
So it's kind of a trump count?
It's a fluctuating thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go over from sa. So it would be, what's the nasal that's next to sa, or in the same row? Yellow. Na. So it would be Vedan Sahasraksham. See how that happens? So it's ready to change. And it's up to the student and the pronunciator to be aware of the opportunity for change.
And it probably sounds really natural if you were like fluently doing it, and then we're studying it in theory, so it's like we have to, like, think
We're
so
studying in
much,
theory, but here's a cool thing, and I went over this last week. So in English, we do the same thing. And we only have 2 nasals in our alphabet. We have N and M. But we have actually all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and perhaps even more nasal opportunities in English. So if we're going to pronounce something with a K, we'll pronounce it like a ng. Here's an opportunity to see that in action. Really pay attention to where in your mouth, throat, voice situation you pronounce this. Incomplete. Ing, ng. It's not na. It's not incomplete. How awkward would that be? Incomplete? No one pronounces it like that. We say incomplete. It's more like incomplete. Because this is a ka. Now let's try it with something in the next varga, the cha varga. So we have here the talavya. How about ingenious? Now it's being pronounced like the nya. Ingenious. It's a half na, half nya. So we're not saying nya, but think about when you say nya. Now say ingenious. Same thing you're doing. You're not saying ingenious. You're not saying ingenious. You're saying ingenious, because the ja, ingenious, is the same as the ja in Sanskrit. Then we have the ka ka da da na. This one's a bit tricky because we don't actively ever go like da in English, but the closest we can come to, I came across this the other day. Intern. Intern. Different than indefinite. Play with those. We have intern, indefinite. Indefinite is definitely in the teeth. Intern is a little bit behind the teeth. This one appropriates that. And this one is just that. And then the last opportunity we can see how this plays out in English is we don't say this. Because that is hard to do, impractical. In dental oshya, dantya oshya. teeth, lips, too hard. So we've changed this into a ma, impractical. Flows right out, ma to pa, because it's the corresponding nasal to the pa. We do it without thinking. Sanskrit has been actively saying, this is what we should do because this is what your mouth wants to do. Does that make sense? So the rule for anuswar, or the da on top of a thing in Sanskrit, is in flux, and it's the reason to make our lives easier, not harder. It's all for the sake of Śikṣā, or pronunciation. Okay, so now that, yeah, I hope that's helpful in a way that you can begin to recognize that Sanskrit, it's on your side. You know?
How do you spell anuswara?
It's written just in very small font underneath the aksharam.
Oh, okay.
See it?
Gotcha.
Anuswara.
Mhm.
And to reiterate a point we went over last week, I at least one time said the word Rigved rather than Veda. And someone, Belina, last week asked, why is sometimes that last disappear? And the reason is in modern Indian languages, especially North Indian languages, they're in a rush. So they take away, no, that's not the real reason, but it has something to do with it. Linguistic drift is a phenomenon that happens. And in modern languages, hard vowels become soft vowels, aspirates become unaspirate, long vowels become short vowels, and short vowels disappear. That was just like an exaggerated way of saying that. I have a Sanskrit name, it's Arjuna. I'll write it in IAST. This is the male form of this name. If I were to have a wife and someone wanted to refer to her, the rules of Sanskrit are such that you could actively refer to my wife using my name in the feminine form. So Arjuna is the wife of Arjuna. Similarly, Shiva is his name. Shiva is his wife's name. In Hindi and languages similar to Hindi, and especially in the north part of India, Arjuna is pronounced Arjuna. Arjuna is pronounced closer to Arjun. Ayurveda, having a short at the end of it, is often pronounced Ayurveda. Yoga. Wat bit the cuff. Sometimes Mitesh and Sneha will do that a lot. They'll say, if your wat is off, or if your pit is out, or if you have too much cuff. And so theirs is a hard stop.
Yeah.
Ideally, it's not that you're removing that short vowel at the end, you're just pronouncing it very, very lightly. So Ayurveda. Ayurveda. I pronounce it Ayurveda, because I will distinguish between Ayurveda and Ayurveda. Those are two different things for me. But for modern Hindi speakers especially, just taking it away is a good way to definitely distinguish that you're saying it with a short vowel, because it's so short it's not even there. So that's that part of things.
Can I just ask you a question about names? Like you were talking about, like if you change, if your wife would be called the same name as you with an S on the end?
A long form of the vowel.
Okay. So I knew someone who his name was Govindaraj.
Mm-hmm.
And why is his first name part of his last name too? Is that a common thing?
That's not so common to even have. Was he a Westerner or a foreigner or Indian?
He was Indian.
I mean, having a last name like Govindaraj is not too uncommon. So we would write that in IAST as, this is the last name, Govindaraja. That's how it's spelled. That's not entirely true, because that's how it's spelled in Devanagari. Because most Indian languages, that's not true. The more popular Indian languages, where many people speak them, use Devanagari, like Hindi, uses the same script to write their language. And they'll write this with that at the end. So that upside down, this is the last letter of the name. The last aksharam, that is. But it'll be pronounced, that takes away the implicit in the aksharam. It would be pronounced Govindaraj. I'm sorry, that's supposed to be a ja. I know, I'm sorry, good eye.
That's what I thought.
No, I know, I don't know why I did that. So, ja. So it's pronounced Govindaraj, but, I would pronounce it Govindaraja. The first name being the same, Govinda is just a name of Krishna. And the name is the royal shepherd of the cows, and referring to Krishna. And to name somebody who belongs to that sort of family lineage with a name that's Krishna-ite in its way, like Krishna or Gopala, it's totally normal. So to name your son Govinda, totally normal, even if your last name is Govindaraja. So that's what's happening there. So I didn't mean to imply also that a short, long ah is the feminine. Long vowels are 90% of the time feminine. So a name like Sita or Gita have long vowels at the end. But it could also be Lakshmi, Saraswati. So Saraswati is a good example of proper pronunciation because I'm sure we've all heard Saraswati.
Exactly.
It's pronounced Saraswati. The only accent is on the long vowel at the end. In Sanskrit, all things being equal, when there's no long vowel, the not the last, not the penultimate, but the antepenultimate vowel is the one that's stressed. So the third to last. Here's an example. Patanjali. All short vowels in this name. How do we stress it? Ideally, we don't. It's Patanjali. But what we can do is Patanjali. There's a little bit of a stress as long as we don't really open it up to an ah. So Patanjali. Patanjali.
How would you open it to an
Patanjali. Or Patanjali would really open it and lengthen it to confuse us. Then we would think it's written like that, wouldn't we?
Right.
So Saraswati is how we pronounce her name. Do your best to be consistent even in the face of somebody saying chakra. You know, when you're next to someone and they're saying something with pronunciation, don't rub it in their face, but, you know, stick to your guns and pronounce things properly because you're great. Yeah. Cakra. Cakra. And I'm sure you know by now that, so here's how we would write this in IAST. Cakra. If we pronounce it like this, for instance, that sounds to me dubiously close to pronouncing it like male reproductive fluid. So the closer you get to that, the further you are from what you want to pronounce. So. This is wheel. It means a circular thing. Cakra. Cakra. The Kala Cakra is the wheel of time. Chakrasana is half wheel pose, Ardha Chakrasana. So like bridge pose or wheel pose when you open up into bridge, when you open up into wheel. And in this case, esoterically, it refers to the centers of energy, the wheels of energy in the body. So a good thing to not pronounce it in the California pronunciation, but to choose to pronounce it with integrity.
What's the California?
Chakra.
Chakra.
So,
That's how I used to say it.
of course, we all have done everything. I mean, I used to eat buffalo chicken sandwiches and fries, and it's, you know, and then I'm sitting with a client and they're doing the same thing, and I have the utmost compassion for a place that I was like 20 minutes ago, you know? So somebody pronouncing it chakra, I'm not going to be like, don't you know? Haven't you learned the thing I just learned? No. Come on, we're all in this together. And 200% of the world is pronouncing things and doing things in a way that, in order to swim in the direction of the stream, is incredibly challenging sometimes. But when you do it, you have the power of the stream behind you. And I like to remember that we're all, for the most part, we want to swim with the current, but a lot of us are like salmon, because all the salmon are going that way, so let's go that way. And if we decide to go the other way, all the salmon are yelling at us, but the entire universe is supporting us. So if you begin to pronounce things in the way that makes sense to Sanskrit, it'll teach you how to pronounce it. It'll learn you.
How do you say Sanskrit?
Well, let's parse it out.
Please.
So I'm going to write it.
Say Sanskrit.
Sanskrit.
Exactly, like sand.
I'm going to do this.
Please.
And so when you talked about Sankhya,
Uh-huh.
just yesterday I was looking at my notes and then I was looking at our little cheat card, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been spelling this Sankhya the whole time, and it's spelled
With an
S-A-M.
M. Yeah.
And I'm like, why did I think it was an N?
But there is
But-
an N in the book.
Oh,
Now that's the thing though. You now know the rule.
Right.
You'll find it written all sorts of ways.
Yes.
You'll find it written with an M with a dot underneath. You'll find it written with an M with no dot underneath. You'll find it written with an N with a dot underneath and an N with a dot on top.
Confusing.
All of them are written differently and weirdly. The only two answers that are appropriate for IAST are either to write it with the M dot underneath, which means anything goes, know what the rule is, or writing it with the correct nasal, which in this case would be N with a dot on top, or ng. So be ready to encounter variations and just know it on the inside. Kya means to, you probably know the word ka. Actually, I don't know if you know the word ka. This is the aksharam, ka. Ka means space. It's a sound that means and implies vastness. The word for sky is ka. The word for the ether is akash, akasha. The word for a bird, I love this one. This word means to go. Go, 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 go. Gachati, gachasi, gachami. You go. He, she, it goes, you go, I go. That's the way to conjugate gacha. Ga. That which goes through space is a bird. Isn't that sweet? That's your first, perfect Sanskrit word. You know exactly what it means and how it got there.
Exactly.
Two easy ingredients makes a bird.
So you say that akash is actually akash?
No, it's not. That's why I hesitated to bring it up. It's spelled with a non-aspirate ka.
Yeah.
It's derived from a similar root as ka. It just grammatically has become ka. And I didn't want to bring it up because that's confusing. So sorry. Thanks for catching it though. So ka is a root that means space. And why did I bring that up? Sankhya. Kya means, without getting too grammatical, it refers to all the things that you can put in space. It's that ya ending. Perhaps it refers to this related to or of space. And sang, in this instance, sang means collection, summation, balance, perfectness. And the word sankhya means to enumerate, to count, or even to, I was almost going to say to give birth to all the things, but that's not entirely true. It's more just like a full collection of all the stuff that could be inside of space. Does that make sense? In Sankhya, literally, it's a discussion of how the universe falls into all form, how it becomes everything it is. So enumeration is the usual way of translating that word. So I'm going to write this word, and then Bolina's going to pronounce it for us. Using the rule of anuswar. How is that pronounced is the main part of this.
So then, the after it is an S.
Yeah,
which is
so yellow.
The
Find the color coordinated nasal. You're going to stay with yellow because you have sa is in yellow, correct? This is what you're going to match it with, so that's yellow. And the corresponding yellow nasal is regular old dental na. So it's pronounced Sanskrita. Here's your other trick. Just put your mouth in the place. Just say, well, it's going to be here. So then just make a dental. Na. This placement for the sa, for the next thing, just turn it into a nasal. So it's got to be na-sa, na-sa, na-sa. That's the easiest thing to do. Ma-sa, you got to go backwards. Na-sa, that's a whole rearrangement of your tongue. Na-sa is all the way back there. It's none of those. So it's going to be na-sa, na-sa, Sanskrita. Make sense?
yes, to die for.
It's a fun thing.
I love it.
So now that we've exhausted all the possibilities of incorrect pronunciation, and we've honed in on how do you pronounce every aksharam in the alphabet, you guys can feel confident saying the alphabet to yourself, inhabiting the part of the mouth-throat vocal apparatus that the rho corresponds to, and just go ka ka ga ga na ha ha. Then move forward and go e a I cha cha ja ja nya ya sha. Then move forward and do your ra ra ta ta da da na. Then move forward and do your whatever's next. Ra ra ta 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 da na. And then your u o ow pa pa ba ba ma wa. Super comfortable with it because it's coming from the inside out. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. For the semi-vowel, the labial, you said that the correct pronunciation would be what?
Let it come from the inside out. It's an U and an Wa. Wa. When I use a term, I'll sometimes say half aksharam. So I might say, like, if we're pronouncing this word, twa, this is just a suffix that means essence of. Sattva, the essence of being. So twa involves two parts of alphabetic speech. It involves a va and a half ta. Because what I've done with the ta is I've taken away the implicit that's in every consonant. Like a ka has an in it. We can turn that into an into an into an into an u, but it has an in it for the purposes of pronouncing the alphabet. So when we take away the implicit aksharam, the implicit in the aksharam, we're left with a half ta in this instance. So in your question, how do you pronounce the wa? It's composed of an u plus an and they become, that's how we transliterate it, wa, wa, wa.
But so why is it not written wa?
Why is it not written like this?
Yeah.
Why is it not written like that? There is, the only way I can answer that, the short answer is I don't know. And then the deeper answer is that Sanskrit does not like when two vowels stand next to each other in a way that moves backwards. So like ow is okay, ow. But doesn't like fit in with the rules of Sanskrit. But the semi-vowel wa does that, but it's not written that way, and so it kind of gets around the rule. That's like a stupid way of reasoning it that I'm just coming to right now.
Yeah. But I'm just a little unsure because I always hear, for example, Dr. Lad pronounce va.
Mm-hmm.
Sarasvati.
Yeah, you'll hear
Everything that has wa, you said,
totally.
is pronounced in our class va.
And you'll find that
So
Pranav and Dr. Lad sometimes pronounced ja, ja. They'll especially pronounce the aspirate form, ja, ja, like that. And I say ja. It's regionally different. There really isn't a right or wrong way that you can pinpoint, other than as long as you're doing, I didn't get into the real deep details here, but I will point this out, that when we get to this part of the alphabet, all of the consonants, we have a hard and we have a soft place, and then we have a non-aspirate and an aspirate. And the difference between hard and soft is one of inviting more vibration in the vocal cords. And so like ka has a certain amount of vibration. Ga, like you can feel it vibrating from the other room. Ga. Short, unaspirate, soft consonant. Ga. 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 It's deep. There's a lot to it. Ka. Very short, very quick, very hard and precise. So for me, cha and ja are similarly short, unaspirate, and unvoiced. And then ja has a voiced. Ja has a little bit less voice to me. So that is the pronunciation that Dr. Lab and Pranav and people from the Marathi speaking part of the country, the way that they pronounce it, ja, has less of a voicedness than ja. So I tend to go for the more voiced when I'm doing ja. So do, I would say, 95% of Sanskrit-speaking people. But if you're from Marathi-speaking parts of the country, you'll pronounce it ja. Similarly, he'll pronounce ra, ri, and he'll pronounce wa, va. Regional differences is the best defense I have for it.
okay. So when we are learning together, am I supposed to say, when we learn the semi-vowel or the words, I'm supposed to say Saraswati or Sarasvati?
It's up to you. I say,
It doesn't matter.
well, first of all, I say Saraswati, but I'll also say Saraswati. I think, as far as in my own admittance, I'll find myself slipping into pronunciations of a harder V and a softer W-ish sound in different contexts. And most of it has to do with like the similar thing with like, I don't say Krishna, I say Krishna, you know? And similarly I say kapha rather than kapha, but we'll note there's no fa sound in Sanskrit, but in Hindi there is. And then, or you know, the pronunciation of pa in Hindi is fa. And so I find myself getting roped in to pronouncing things in different ways. So I'd say pick one. Pick one that follows the rules of Sanskrit pronunciation. If you're going to get to your wa sound, combine your u and your and make it wa. If it ends up being a little bit labial and going va, more power to you. Stick with
I
it.
think that's what I would intend to do, because all the chants we are learning from Dr. Lab, the recordings, and they all are with that.
Yeah, so then do that.
So then,
I mean, I went to music school and I played like my music teacher, and then when I wasn't with my music teacher for 15 years, I developed my own voice, and now I don't play like my music teacher. So if it's helpful,
but it's now that we are learning.
and you're with your music teacher, so play
we
like
are
him. Yeah, I get it.
really registering it for a long time.
I totally get it. There's a couple things Dr. Lad does that are at a discrepancy with some of the more formal rules, and that's just what he does. In this, there's a good example in the bottom, second to the last line here. We can see an apostrophe in the English, let's say, and that big swooping S is the apostrophe in Sanskrit. It's called an avagraha. It holds down the space. Graha meaning to seize, as in Prajapatim ajigrahat, seized by Prajapati. But anyway, the avagraha takes away an That's its role.
Yeah.
Because a plus in Sanskrit isn't attractive. They don't like it. So instead, they elide. It's like a liaison. They go whoop, they go whoop, and then they just go right to, because the word is agni, and so they make it agni, agni,
But we
agni.
pronounce it in the when we
Dr. Lad pronounces the
Yeah.
He doesn't. Sanskrit doesn't.
So, and it's 2 times te agnivesha.
Uh-huh. And so,
Swash vino.
and so 3, yeah.
And yeah.
The third.
So there are 3 times.
Yeah, at least 3 times
And
we
he
use that.
pronounces all the
He
letters
does.
that are-
Typically, they're not pronounced. From my experience, it's pronounced te niveshadi comes te tu pritak.
And so shvino.
So shvinau. Yeah, not so ashvinau. Otherwise, what's the point of the apostrophe?
Yeah.
So, take it with a grain of salt.
Okay.
O and shouldn't exist together in Sanskrit, and so because they don't, they are liaisoned, and it becomes so shvinau. And Dr. Lad pronounces it, and it sounds beautiful, and he thinks it's beautiful, so it's beautiful. But Sanskritists have thought that, it doesn't sound nice to go a or o so we'll take out the weaker of the vowels, which is the So, go with Dr. Lad. Go with God. Go with Lad. All right, I'm going to stop recording, and then we'll just play with this, because this is like an hour and a half, and no one needs that. Bye!